won in straight sets. Oh, we're live. We're live, Ramon.
Oh, yeah, look at that. We are. Hey, guys. Mark and I with you here today, winning U.S. Open. And Mark, you got right into a great question. And if you could repeat it for everyone, that would be awesome.
Does anybody have a view, particularly Ramon, as to why Djokovic? I guessed it, by the way. I said the first few sets would be 3-2. Why Djokovic won relatively comfortably yesterday against the power of Ben Shelton. Had Ben just been overhyped and he had reached his ceiling? In fact, he'd gone past his ceiling to get to the semis. What's your view?
It's a great question. And if you guys have any insights on this down below, let us know in the comments and ask us any questions that you might have. This is all about us interacting with you. But to answer your question, Mark, I think for Ben Shelton, who was in his first semifinals at his home slam against arguably the best player of all time, the thing that I love about Shelton is he genuinely throws caution to the wind when he gets into the big moments, and probably errs a little bit on the side of, as you would say, bravado, which is, a lot of screaming, a lot of,
comes with youth, doesn't it?
It comes with youth, and I would never try to talk him out of that, but I think he's already discovering, in football they call it bulletin board material. And he had a quote with Djokovic. I saw this on Facebook that was like, I don't know why everyone's picking Djokovic. He's not going to know what hit him. As if Djokovic needed any more motivation.
Yeah.
Djokovic is a guy who can play at an elite level under any circumstance. But maybe it's his upbringing. He seems to thrive when people are throwing adversity at him.
Yeah. But you just got to look at his roots in Serbia and his growing up, relatively poor, hitting a tennis ball in a swimming pool that had no water, etc., with war and battle going on around him. Whether it's fair, unfair, but that's how he was brought up. It's Serbia against the world, man.
100%.
Which is compounded by, I look after my body immaculately. I bet nobody else in the world looks after their body as well as mine. And you want me to put a foreign substance in? Come on, guys. Yeah. So he sticks to his principles. Australia, 100%. America, and as Steve Jobs once said, a principle is only a principle when it loses your money.
Right.
So he lost money. He had the chance of losing titles and his whole GOAT thing, and never mind, he had his principles.
And going back to that, I mean, he was, and maybe he attracted this, who knows, but he came up right with Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer. You had these two titans that everybody loved, and then Djokovic couldn't be, by definition, the third person that everybody loved, because you have to have a villain. And I'll be the first to admit, I was one of the ones that was against Djokovic in my earlier and stupider days.
Where's the villain? We've got two heroes. I'm a nice guy. No, you don't have a chance. You've got to play the villain. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it fits him perfectly. But the more I hear him speak, going back to your point about principles, and the more I see what his actions are, I mean, the guy is already going to run away with the Grand Slam titles trophy. I still think Medvedev's going to win on Sunday. We'll get to that in a second.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
But
what I did like, and I kind of felt, rightly or wrongly, because Djokovic can have his own histrionics, but I felt he was doubling down on the control of his emotions, and he would give nothing, no signal, no clue, no body language, no emotions, no outbursts to his opponent. So his opponent had nothing to work off. He was doing it all.
And Djokovic has been around the block. He knows every time Shelton lets out a scream after a big point, it's excitement, but it's like, NFL coaches especially talk about the extreme elation and extreme depression being polar ends of the same coin. And the only true place to be is in the middle, where, and this is the hardest thing to do in tennis, obviously, where points go ebb and flow. But the more even keel you are and the ability to stay within yourself, and that's what he did so well. Whereas Shelton was on a yo-yo, which is normal. And I still think he's going to be a tremendous player.
Yeah.
But he wasn't ready yet.
But there were a few points that Djokovic pulled out of the fire, like the drop shots. And normally you would expect Djokovic, because you just can't help yourself. Yes. But no, he was just calmness personified, turned on his heel, walked to the next, like, oh my God, that is studied. That is training. That's not normal.
It's got to be tough if you're the opponent and you play the point of your life and you hit an unbelievable shot and you turn, and, for, let's say, a break a serve or a big point in a game, and you turn around and Djokovic looks like he's having a stroll in the park and is already into his routine for the next point.
So here's the other learning I got from it is that, arguably, Shelton won, let's say, 80% of the most entertaining, eye-catching, extraordinary points. But it was Djokovic that won 4 points. Boom, boom. Yes, I'm 30 love down. Yes, they were 2 amazing points. But can you get to 4? No.
Clinical.
Just like he did against Taylor Fritz. Taylor Fritz, yes, extraordinary shots. I couldn't do that. But can you get to 4? No. Well, that's another game to me. Thank you.
And Shelton in that third set, if I'm not mistaken, had set point on his racket and had just broken Djokovic. Or maybe Djokovic was serving. I can't remember. But you could just see the deliberate focus and intention from Djokovic. And I told Raquel, I was like, Djokovic is not going to miss on this point. He's just not going to miss. And sure enough, I mean, he found a way when a way was not evident. Let's shift gears for a second and let's talk about the match that nobody saw coming.
Including me.
Humbly except me. And you can go back to yesterday's episode. I still think Medvedev's going to win the whole thing. But what did you see? And we'll get into what we talked with Lenny about, our resident expert on the eye and the brain. What did you see yesterday from Alcaraz and Medvedev?
Right. So confess, I only saw a few highlights because it was on at midnight my time. Okay. But Medvedev has a technique that doesn't look like breaking down. It's very efficient, very economical. And he always seems to be playing within himself. And because of that, I have noticed in the past that his head is still, his eyes are still, and he hits the ball perfectly. And you can carry on. But Carlos has a game where there's lots of talk, as in TORQUE, lots of talk. And from time to time, you could see or believe that his eyes would be off the ball and misplaced a bit. And that is where Lenny was talking that the visualization and the instincts broke down, and Medvedev's visualization and instincts didn't. And that's where the match is turned.
Well, it was a pleasure to watch. And, that first set was nip and tuck, and the second set, Medvedev just sort of ran away with it. Every single point seemed to have that same amount of drama. But what you said about Medvedev and his eyes, and he is just like Alcaraz, just like Djokovic, is so disciplined with his eyes. And it's something we get lost, especially if you're watching, the commentators on ESPN, or you're watching a lot of different videos on stroke technique and tactics, and all that stuff really matters. Okay. You can't get to that level without being fundamentally sound, technically, tactically, physically strong, resilient, mentally strong and resilient. But the thing that Lenny pointed out is the ability to visualize powerfully during the point is the bulletproof vest when it comes to pressure. And what Medvedev found out somehow by probing, that's his game, is that Alcaraz on the big points was likely to try to overhit on his forehand side. And so he was actually going into what people would say is a suicide mission to go into the forehand side. And that's where he was picking up those errors. And so what Lenny said, which I thought was really brilliant, is that sometimes the biggest shot is also the most susceptible to being broken down. And it was a heck of a match. Alcaraz is still going to win multiple Grand Slams. It's definitely not a chink in his armor, but I think Medvedev is probably the most stubborn player on tour, and I mean that in the most respectful way possible, and the most or the least affected by external noise, right up there with Djokovic. I mean, you can hear it in his press conferences. He doesn't give a rip about what anybody thinks about him. And
particularly the American crowd. He baits them, doesn't he? He baits them. He's like the gladiator in the arena with the emperor in the crowd, and he baits them. I mean, amazing.
Yeah. So it was an incredible match, and I'm really looking forward to the final. Because
my takeaway, if I can interrupt you, because we don't want to lose it, is that everybody else, all the commentators, will be talking about whatever they're talking about, the crowd, the Americans supporting the American, and Sabalenka, and all of it is very, very valid. But the thing nobody talks about, and what we would say is the one thing that separates Grand Slam winners from losers and runners-up, is what's happening to the eye.
100%. And we, if you look at Coco Gauff, for example, who is an unbelievable athlete and who is so instinctive, who has all of the intangible skills. I saw a quote from her talking about keeping things in perspective. That there's people out there that don't have food, and there's people that, have to try to pay their bills and she gets to play a game. So obviously there's a lot that goes into playing that game, but she's got a perspective. But to your point, Mark, the eyes are required in this sport for us to win, for us to play at the highest level possible. And what you see from Coco, who everybody has pointed out, is on the serve, her eyes are out towards France at the point of contact.
Yeah, and her forehand.
And her forehand. So that doesn't mean she's necessarily going to lose. But if I were a betting man, I would put it on Sabalenka to win, despite the crowd being in Coco's corner.
Yeah. So Sabalenka, I'm sure this is inaccurate too, but it seems to me she only knows one game, which is to hit with venom and power into the corners.
Yeah.
And provided she can get that game going, you could see that the more the match goes on, particularly the pressure points, Coco will break down on her forehand or serve. I mean, imagine if Sabalenka is just leaning into returns of serve and cracking it. The pressure that's on Coco to get her first or second serves in and do it well will be huge.
And the wild card would be Sabalenka's mental and emotional state. And I said this on yesterday's show. One of the biggest improvements, probably the biggest improvement for her, because she could always hit the ball like a freight train. But she couldn't always maintain her composure, particularly under pressure when it counts.
Yeah.
There were so many matches I was watching with Raquel and just saying, gosh, if she gets the mental part together, she's going to be unstoppable. And somehow she's figured that out, because obviously she's won a Grand Slam at this point.
Come back from 6-love last time is no, and then won two tie breaks, 7-6, 7-6. Yes.
Yeah. Super, super steady under pressure. And I'd be curious to hear.
Must be the most knowledgeable club player in Los Angeles, I would say.
Definitely the prettiest. But I think that when it comes to Coco and Sabalenka, it's going to come down to whether or not Coco can break her down mentally, because as far as her strokes go and her eyes, she's not perfect with her eyes, but she's better than Coco, especially on the serve. So it'll be an interesting match to watch. The men's, I know you've got.
Well, just before we get on to the men's, for both of us, just to get off the tight fence, I'm going to go for Zabalenka, and you?
Sabalenka, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, I got Sabalenka.
Well, we can't go
sets.
for Coco because at the beginning of the tournament, all the pundits were Coco, and you and I were, no, she doesn't look at the ball enough. At some stage, she's going to break down. That is not a habit of a Grand Slam winner. So we're repeating that, and I am prepared to have egg all over my face tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reminds me of a video I made 2 years ago when Djokovic, a segue, Djokovic was playing Medvedev in the finals, maybe been 3 years ago. And the title of the video is "Why Medvedev Will Beat Djokovic at the U.S. Open." And it's probably one of my most commented on videos because obviously Djokovic ran away with that match. And I think I still eat crow to this day on that video. And it won't be the first and won't be the last time. But as we go into Djokovic and Medvedev, what are you going to be looking for, Mark, in this match?
I think this will be brutal. I think both players will have got themselves into a state of being prepared to suffer and suffer for every point, and if needs be, suffer for every point for 5 sets. None of them will break down. Neither of them will take a back step. It'll be like two heavyweight prize fighters just going at it. So that's my prediction, that nobody's going to run away with it. And I think Jocko will edge it. It'd be wrong to say he's got more desire, but there's more resting on it for Jocko. He doesn't have many more years and goes at it. This is it. So he definitely is not going to leave the court with anything left.
100%.
And I think that fine margin, 2 more points than your opponent, after 4 hours or more on court, Jocko mentally, physically will find a way to win 2 more points.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with you. And I think that it's going to be an unbelievable match. That is going to be grueling. It is going to be brutal to watch. And just imagine what these guys are going through inside. Forget about physically. But I'm going to go with Medvedev. And the reason for Medvedev is what you said, the physical part of it. And Djokovic is in supreme condition. But I just think, and again, I might be eating crow at this, at the end of a 2-week-long tournament, grueling tennis and another grueling match ahead, youth is finally going to overcome experience and wisdom. And I think Medvedev has the ability to be stubborn, so stubborn in a match that is equaled only by Djokovic. And so I'm going to take Medvedev in a close match in 4 sets.
Well, this is a Russian mentality against a Serbian mentality. Both are used to being trodden upon. It's in their DNA. And as for the youth, I think he's a spent force. He will come on to Flushing Meadow in a wheelchair. They'll wheel him in and give him a racket because he's so tired. He's broken. He's done, man.
Yeah. No, you could very well be right. I guess we'll see. Let us know what you guys think, who you think is going to win, and what you're going to be looking for in the match. And
everybody should look at the eyes, because we are distracted by long rallies. So we never realize that the average point is probably 4.8 strokes or something like that. We think we just get distracted by the long rallies. We don't see the first strikes, the serve plus one or the return of serve, but we don't see that. And we watch everything except watching the head and the eye. Is it stationary? Were they on balance when they hit the ball? Because that's the thing that separates the winners from the losers.
Well, if you think about it logically, the eyes control 80% of the sensory information coming into the brain. And so if the eyes are flittering around, if they're moving, that's a whole lot of new information that's coming in that's hitting the brain from a bunch of different areas. And particularly at the point of contact where everybody loses their attention and their focus as it shifts to the other side of the net, that has an impact on balance, but it also has an impact on the signal that is required in the brain to go out to the hand. And so it makes a whole lot of sense then to think that, well, whoever controls their eyes the best is going to win. And so if you guys are out there playing matches, one of the biggest things that you can do is to really work with your eye and train your eye. We'll have more information about the new system that we have coming out called Clutch, which actually combines vision training with Billie Jean King's Sweet Spot, along with tactical training, and really employs it in a way where you're training a very small number of skills repeatedly, mastering a few tactics that are evidence-based, because at the end of the day, we don't have a whole lot of time. We're not like these guys that can spend hours every week on court. So we got to maximize each moment that we have. And when it comes down to the big moments in your USTA league, or if you're playing ITFs or you're playing social doubles at the club, your ability to execute under pressure, and there is going to be pressure, you can guarantee it,
sure,
is directly related to your training and who you know yourself to be in those big moments.
Let me just add to that. Yeah, if I just add to that. So you've allowed me to talk about the missing link, which is the military training. The military training is more about the brain. So he talks about the eye only looking at one thing, which is the back of the ball and the whoosh. So that's a signal going into the brain. If the brain has got self down to a fine art, it's got nothing to think about. And that then pure signal can go rush down the via synapses into the body, into the hand, and make a perfect shot. As you said rightly, if the eye is looking at a few things, the brain's got to work that out. And now if the brain is thinking about a few things, that signal going down to the synapses in the hand will be slow. The refractory period will be bap, bap, bap. And it might even be broken, so you're hitting the shot blind. And that's what we train, and that's what Medvedev and what we've been talking about with Sabalenka, Coco Gauff, and Djokovic today. That's who's going to determine who wins and who loses.
I'll tell you a quick story. Yesterday, we had some Friday night doubles at the court here, and I had my doubles partner Ashish, and then a savvy 60-year-old who has every shot in the book, and a young whippersnapper who's got a booming serve, huge ground strokes, really deft touch at the net. And this goes into self and identity. It was a tough time of day. The sun was just going over the trees. And so, the light was kind of bright in spots and dark in spots. And it was just really difficult to see, to your point, the ball. And Ashish and I got off to a really good start. I think we were up 3-love in the first set. And Ryan, who was the young whippersnapper, he hit a couple of double faults. He hit a couple of relatively easy volleys into the net. And he went on a downward spiral in a hurry. And it was difficult to watch because...
Like you did. Difficult to not to laugh, I should think.
Well, Ashish and I moved to each other and said, let's really give him some high, slow kick serve.
Yeah.
Give him some time to think about it. And sure enough, he imploded. And the self, though, that you could hear the conversation that he was having with himself audibly and inaudibly if you were watching him. And it wasn't it wasn't a friendly conversation.
Abusive.
And so it was abusive. And I think we all fall into this. But the better we master that part of ourselves, self-esteem, self-image, whatever you want to call it, the more that's going to help us in the big moments. And that's what I love about Clutch, is it combines the physical skills, okay, the tactics, and breaking down the tactics into 2-shot combinations and training them progressively, mastering them by really honing in on the basics, nailing them meticulously, getting loads of reps in. Repetition obviously being the key, and quality repetitions being the double key. But then you combine that with training under pressure, which most of us never do. Most of us go out and have a hits and giggles on a Thursday afternoon, and everything's feeling great and loosey-goosey. And then we get into the match, and it's like it's a totally different sport. So you combine the tactics and the repetition with pressure, where it's accountable, where you have scoring systems and 9 different levels of pressure that we can mix and match to really gamify the training and make it so accountable and so measurable that it flies by in the blink of an eye, and you just really start to enjoy training this way. But the missing piece and the glass ceiling for everybody is the self. It's what you say to yourself. It's the thoughts that you have. It's the emotions you experience. And it's the feelings that you create on court. And being able to take control of that process consciously with robust and repeatable tools, I think, is one of the most exciting things about this program. So if you guys are watching this on a replay and you want more information about Clutch, we'll leave a link down below in the show notes where you can sign up for that or learn more about it. Mark, we're heading towards the end of our show. Not quite there, but you have anything to add before we
just to say, tomorrow is the last version of this show for Winning US Open. We will be having a weekly show leading up to the Australian Open, where we'll go daily. And for tomorrow, Ramon, I am going to look out in the cupboard and get the biggest nice slice of humble pie and bring it in for you.
You heard it here first, folks. I might be eating a slice of humble pie, or I might come riding in on Monday and saying, guys, you should have listened. But we'll find out. It's going to be a fantastic final. Guys, if you're tuning in, hit the like button, share this with somebody who would enjoy it. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Mark, it's always a pleasure doing these with you.
Yeah, always a pleasure, never a chore. Lovely. I look forward to seeing you in LA soon.
Awesome. All right, guys, have a great Saturday. We'll see you soon.